Friends, will you pray with me? And as you feel so comfortable and familiar, I invite you to join me in the second time through. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God. Amen. I'm going to adjust this a tiny bit. Our story begins in the mostly dark. As the day was dawning, Matthew writes, earlier even than those of us who got up for the sunrise service this morning, just a hint of light in the sky. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, who is mentioned a few verses before as the mother of James and Joseph, are heading to the tomb. I try to imagine what that must have looked like, what they would have looked like. Puffy faces, perhaps, from crying. Were they holding hands to support one another? Perhaps their shoulders were slumped from exhaustion after the weight of not only the past few days, but the time leading up to that. They have celebrated perhaps a quiet, mournful Sabbath. And now that the Sabbath is over, they are heading to the tomb. Unlike the story of the resurrection in Mark and Luke, the women do not have spices with them. They are not going to anoint or prepare Jesus's body. So why are they going? To view, the Greek word is therousai, so to look at or sort of discern the tomb. Seems perhaps a little odd. Why? Just to check on things, make sure after the Sabbath nothing has happened to the tomb? Just to remind themselves that the events that had transpired were in fact real, that they hadn't just dreamed them. Because in grief, sometimes things get a little fuzzy, and sometimes it can be hard to even know what is real. Perhaps they are just visiting to see what is real. Or maybe, they're remembering what Jesus said about what was to happen. Maybe they are going, daring to hope to see something. Not sure what yet. Perhaps they are going there to continue to bear witness. One writer notices that these same women are named explicitly just a few verses earlier. While the male disciples betray and desert Jesus at the crucifixion, the two Marys remain as witnesses, looking on, same word, therousai, from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee and had provided for him. And in this context, provide, the Greek word diakonosai, you hear that diaconate in there, means to furnish essential resources. It's the same word that Matthew uses for giving food to the hungry, drink to the thirsty, and so on. So they have stayed with Jesus, looking on at the cross from a distance, perhaps just taking a break for the Sabbath before continuing to go and be with him. And so it is that they arrive at the tomb. And when they arrive, there is another earthquake. This is the second one in 3 days, the first being at the moment of Jesus' death on the cross. The earthquake is as an angel rolls away the stone and sits on it. Plops down, delicately perches. We're not sure. We can imagine how the scene unfolds, the personality of this angel. This angel looks like lightning, which I love as a creation reference, and dressed in pure white. His appearance scares the guards into unconsciousness, but the women are simply amazed. Wow, cool. Perhaps they were expecting something like this. The angel tells them first, do not be afraid. Second, Jesus has been raised as he said he would be. Come, look, and see the empty tomb. And third, the angel commissions them to go and tell the disciples what they've seen. They do go, but not without fear, despite the angel's declaration, with fear and great joy, mixed emotions. Like the dawn in which they arrive, the light is breaking in, but it's still full of shadowy places, fuzzy around the edges. If our first or 51st reaction to the idea of resurrection is skepticism, we are not alone. The stories of Eastertide, and remember that Easter is not the end of Lent, but the beginning of a whole new season, which lasts 50 days as opposed to the 40 days of Lent, despite getting less attention. These stories are full of trust and doubt, questioning and faith. Even those who knew him best, physically in the presence of the risen Christ, had moments of disbelief. It only stands to reason that those of us looking back 2,000 years might be mystified and hesitant to believe. But the two Marys don't let their fear or any questions keep them from their task. They continue to move forward rather than freezing while they figure it all out. On their way, they are greeted by the risen Christ, who again repeats, "Do not be afraid," and again tells them to go to share the good news with the guys and all the others who have been following Jesus. Two important things. First, Jesus calls the other disciples brothers. He says, "Go and tell my brothers." So clearly, he has forgiven them for all their doubt and denial and desertion. Second, not only does the angel bestow this important task on the two women, but Christ chooses to appear to them before the men. These commissions make them the original apostles. The Greek word is apostolos, person sent forth. This same commentary continues, whether or not they're completely convinced, they proclaim the mystery. They announce the good news. They are the original apostles, staying with Jesus on the cross, if only from a distance, and showing up at dawn on the third day with great expectations. To anyone who argues that women should not be leaders in the Christian church at the highest levels, this story stands as a luminous, devastating reply. The women who share the news first. Okay, so great story. But what does it mean for us today? Other than that women should be leaders in the church. There's no resurrected Christ. Even as I was writing this, I was like a little worried. Appearing in our midst for us to touch and worship. No angels moving aside rocks, although I'm sure those of us who garden amidst glacial erratics might appreciate a visit from an angel to shove aside a boulder or two. There's no even big, exciting news for us to share, really. Everyone already knows about Jesus coming back to life, right? I mean, at least in our society, even the unchurched have some vague notion about what Easter is beyond the bunny and candy. It might be stretching it a bit, but at least they know it has something to do with Jesus. I hope. I hope. But this story absolutely has relevance for our lives today. We too live in a time of dawn breaking, where light shines, but shadows and struggles are still present. We want so much to join the chorus of "Where, O death, is now thy sting?" without reservation, but we know too well the sting of death. The Alleluias sometimes ring hollow when echoing through the reality of our broken world. But the Marys lived in a similar reality. The resurrected Christ did not end the Roman occupation and oppression. The empty tomb did not fill the bellies of the hungry. The joy did not remove the fear. The belief did not erase the doubt. And yet they showed up anyway, with great expectations for what could happen. They proclaim the good news anyway, despite their trepidation. They hold the mystery and the grief and the pain, along with the hope and celebration and love. What if we did the same? What if we proclaimed, and as Wendell Berry suggested in his poem, Manifesto, the Mad Farmer Liberation Front, which we heard at the sunrise service, for those who were there, what if we practiced resurrection, despite our questions and complicated feelings? What if we showed up to church and relationships and politics and social media and creation and life with the expectation that something amazing could happen, and then went out and shared the good news, despite our complicated feelings? In Easter, God took an instrument of torture, one of the worst things in the world, the Roman cross, and turned it into something beautiful, the tree of life. Fear not, for all is not forsaken. In the end, love always wins. And if it doesn't look that way right now, then it's not the end. Keep going with fear and joy. Christ is risen. Alleluia.